Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Thursday, September 18th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. It is week number 3. It is Buccaneers week. The New York Jets hit the road for the first time this season, and they go down to Tampa Bay. Today, we're joined by Buccaneers reporter J.C. Allen to give us all of the Buccaneers angle heading into this matchup. JC, thanks so much for coming on. How's it going, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. What a fitting name for the podcast is what the Bucs are dealing with right now in their trenches. But yeah, super excited to be on here and chop it up with you.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. And yes, you're definitely right about that. Lots of injuries up front for the Buccaneers, so we'll see how that plays out in this one. We'll get into that here very soon. But just wanted to start today with just your general thoughts overall on the Buccaneers 2-0 coming off of that big late drive by Baker Mayfield win over the Houston Texans, and then just your outside view on what you've seen from the Jets so far. Promising week 1, that was a loss, and then a blowout in week 2. Aaron Glenn still searching for his first win.
Yeah, I think with the Bucs, it's just kind of these are games they would have lost last year. So finding ways to win, finding ways to finish games is huge for them, and it shows that growth from last season where they really struggled to close out games and they lost a lot of close games in the end. So just having that ability already to win those games, it puts a lot of confidence in you as a team, puts a lot of confidence in each other that, hey, no matter what happens, we know we're still in this. I mean, Todd Bowles, kudos to him. You know, he won't admit it. They won't admit it, but letting Nick Chubb score at the end of there instead of bleeding the time and then not taking the time out as the game was winding down. People, what are you doing? Take the time out. They don't do that because they didn't want to leave any time left on the clock, learning from that loss 2 years ago when the Texans won the game with 6 seconds left. So making sure Baker has the ball in his hands at the end of the game is something they really wanted to focus on this year in close games. And so far it's paid off for them with a 2-0 win. As for the Jets, you know, they're still searching for a lot of things, it feels like. Feels like they're still searching for a quarterback. Still feels like they're searching for consistent playmakers. Obviously, you got Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. But outside of them, there's really no one else who's stepped up to be that other option. So if you can take away the run game, take away Garrett Wilson, there's no one else to really turn to on the offensive side. On the defensive side, they've done a lot of good work in the trenches. That defensive line is pretty formidable with the guys they have there. They've got some decent linebackers and some decent secondary players, but I just think it's a lack of talent right now for the Jets. And as they have a new regime come in and start building the way they want to build, you know, the turnaround will happen eventually, I feel like. But right now, you're just kind of putting stuff together and hoping it sticks and trying to build that culture, build that attitude, that mindset, so that when next season comes in and you know, you can bring in more guys and draft more guys and get that right mindset. It's kind of like what the Bucs did in 2019 with Bruce Arians. They brought in a very respected coach around the league and started to build that culture, build that character, build what they wanted in the locker room. Brought in Tom Brady. That certainly expedited the process. I don't know if there's a Tom Brady for the Jets to find out there right now, but they tried it with Aaron Rodgers. That wasn't the trick. But I think that's kind of the baseline for the Jets this season. If we can be competitive, awesome. Let's go out there. Let's try to win some games, to be competitive in games. But let's really establish what we're all about here in the New York Jets under Aaron Glenn. So it's going to be interesting to see how they progress. They've got like I mentioned, a couple of them. They got a lot of good young players who I'm excited to kind of see develop. Guys they got in the draft, guys that they've had from the previous draft classes. So, you know, but they're banged up too on the offensive line as well. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how that all plays out. And you're kind of spot on with the Brady stuff. I guess the Jets version of that was going all out for Aaron Rodgers, and you know, it didn't end up working out. Of course, only the Jets. But you mentioned the Jets secondary going up against Baker Mayfield in this one big challenge. Jets secondary struggled in both these games. Brandon Stevens been one of the biggest culprits. I want to just dive into Baker here for a second. What have you seen from him, 2 games in, just seen from him in general in Tampa, kind of seeing the transition of his career where looked like he was counted out, looked like he was on the verge of just being kind of a journeyman backup to reviving his career in Tampa and one of the better quarterbacks now in the league.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to he got drafted by the factory of sadness,
Yeah.
the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they were coming off of 0-16. They fired their head coach in the middle of the season, and then it was revolving door. I think at this point, Baker's had like 9 offensive coordinators, 8 head coaches. It's just there's been no stability for him anywhere he's been other than Tampa Bay, and that's not just coaching wise. That's organizational wise, from the front office to the ownership all the way down. And coming here, I think the best thing that happened to Baker was getting released by the Panthers and signing with the Rams. Because in Cleveland, he was learning a bunch of different systems, seeing them almost every year, some multiple times a year because they were firing offensive coordinators in the middle of the season. And then Carolina was never a fit for him. Not his play style, really, the way he played. It was never a good fit for him. He goes to LA and really, the 2-day turnaround everyone talks about, but he finds a system that works for him. And it's carried over. He comes here. Dave Canales has got Shane Waldron was a part of McVay's system, and a lot of his offensive coordinating style comes from Shane Waldron and that Rams style of defense. And then Liam Cohen comes over, and again, offensive coordinator for Sean McVay, heavy in that system as well. And then Mike McDaniels had Josh Grizzard on his staff. Again, Kyle Shanahan, McVay kind of thing. So the system hasn't changed really the 3 years. There's been differences in terminology and the way that things go and adjustments, right? When they first brought it in, they want to be a wide zone, mid zone, outside zone team. They're much better at gap, push, pull, pinning, stuff like that, duo. So they've kind of transformed. It's almost like a hybrid type of system that they're running now. But that has just played into his strengths. And I think the biggest thing for Baker, when he came into the facility, the Bucs said, just be you. Just who you are. And Baker's gone on record and said, I've never had anyone tell me that anywhere I've gone in the NFL. So they were really, really behind just be who you are. Todd Bowles did extensive scouting on him when he was coming out of the draft. Bruce Arians did extensive. Fun fact, if Tom Brady had stayed retired in 2023, the Bucs, or 2022, the Bucs were going to try to trade for Baker Mayfield from the Browns. They've been infatuated him for a while. So I think all that, plus the weapons around, plus, Tampa's a great place to live and play too. So all those things I think and he talked about really finding God and Jesus and stuff like that, and help grounding him with his wife, and I think those all play big roles into who you're seeing now as Baker. It's always been there. The consistency, the stability hasn't been there, and the ability to just go be himself. And you've seen the fruits of that labor paying off for him and for the Bucs.
100%. And I wanted to move on to just some of the playmakers that the Buccaneers have surrounded with him and loaded at a couple spots. You look at the running back room, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White down the stretch in last game, Irving with more to the receiving side of things, and then Rachaad White punching in for the score. And in the receiving game, Mike Evans, you have Emeka Buka, 3 touchdowns in his first 2 career games. Something about those Ohio State receivers, they just grow on trees over there. What's been so good with that group, both the running backs and then the receivers? Obviously, Mike Evans, I mean, he's going for his 12th 1,000-yard season in as many years. So one of the most consistent receivers in the last real decade.
Yeah, the Bucs are really lucky. I mean, not many teams in the league can say they have 2-3 down caliber backs on their team, and I think that's where you've seen. It's funny you mentioned Rachaad White running the ball, Bucky Irving receiving. That flipped last year.
Yeah.
Like Rachaad White is one of the best receiving backs in space in the league. He's also one of the best pass protecting backs, and those are areas where Bucky has really kind of identified that he wanted to get better at, and spent the offseason working at those spots. So when Rachaad White trimmed down a little bit and he wanted to be a little bit more explosive in the running game, and we saw those 2 things. So having both of those guys, and the forgotten man Sean Tucker too, as well, who can do some damage. NFC Offensive Player of the Week last year when he went off for 230 something total yards against the Saints. So they have a very deep stable of running backs, and they use them differently, and they use them at the same time. You'll see some pony packages on Sunday where he's got Rachaad and Bucky both in the backfield, and it really it messes with teams' heads because you can flex both of those guys out to the slot or out wide too, and they're dangerous out there. So having both of those guys in the backfield doesn't allow a defense to shut one down because there's always a fresh one coming in, and it really it's a hamper on teams. And now the Bucs, I think, are 10 or 11 straight games with over 100 yards rushing as a team. So they've just been able to really pound the rock with those two. And it doesn't matter who's in there, and even when Sean Tucker comes in too. But at wide receiver, yeah, Mike Evans, we know he's starting to get his due. And one thing about Mike Evans that a lot of people don't or underestimate, they just think of this big 6'5" wide receiver. He's a go ball guy, right? He's a corner fade end. No, he's one of the most polished route runners in the NFL. The last few years, they've been moving him around into the slot, getting him different various looks so he can be in advantageous positions. And then just Mike Evans himself. The Buccaneers game-winning touchdown to Emeka Egbuka, who I'll get into, was because of Mike Evans on the field. He did not get the ball. Egbuka scored the touchdown, but that play resulted because Jesse Bates, they had done it's a crazy story. They had done that play 3 times that game. And on the second time they ran that play, Emeka Egbuka realized after Mike Evans closed in, or the third time they ran that play, whichever one it was, he realized that Jesse Bates is going to close in on Mike because it's Mike Evans. And I'm going to be one-on-one with my guy. He's playing a little bit more outside. If I give him an outside, like a head fake, and then pop it back inside, I should be one-on-one with the leverage to make the catch. Sure enough, that's what happened. But that just tells you Mike Evans, if he's not catching the ball, he's taking away a defender on defense and opening things up for everybody else. And Emeka Egbuka, polished as they come, ready from day one. When you have everyone in the organization comparing him to Chris Godwin Jr., or they're calling him, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, those are some lofty expectations. Strange enough, he's tied with Amon St. Brown for the league lead in touchdowns right now with 3, but he's just been absolutely amazing. When Chris Godwin comes back, I mean, you saw what he was doing last year. He was on pace for the Triple Crown and probably would have gotten it had he not got injured. So, I mean, they're deep there. Jalen McMillan will be back after week 9, and he had a really strong end to the season, was looking really good in training camp. And then they've got guys like Sterling Shepard, Ryan Miller, Tez Johnson, some guys there who are kind of waiting in the wings and who've been there in Shep's case, and continue to make plays for the Bucs when they need it. Ryan Miller caught a touchdown. He's nasty at blocking. He's out there. He'll probably be out there for 20 snaps, and 18 of them he's blocking in the run game, and he's blocking his butt off. And then you got Kate Otten too thrown to that mix at tight end, and Payne Durham, and so plethora of weapons, especially when Godwin's healthy. It just all depends on up front. Baker's going to have time to get the ball to his receivers.
Yeah, Buka has always been a guy that I've been very high on. Always kind of felt he was a little bit underrated this year coming into the draft. I think kind of got a little draft fatigue on him because he was supposed to come out prior and had the injury, came back, but he's been excellent and certainly somebody to look for on Sunday. You mentioned the offensive line. I guess we could just dive right into it. The injuries, of course, Tristan Wirfs, and now you dealing with, Luke Gedeke and now Cody Mauch as well. What's the latest there, and who fills in? What do you expect to be the starting 5? And you on Monday night, right? You kind of already saw some of the issues. Baker taking 4 sacks and a ton of other hits. So what's the latest there?
Yeah, not a clue. Practice was today. This is Thursday when we're recording this. Practice today. Michael Jordan, who's been their starting right guard for the last 2 weeks, did not practice today. So they've got their starting center playing left tackle in Graham Barr, and they've got their starting left guard in Ben Bredesen playing center. They have their swing tackle, Charlie Heck. He's playing right tackle in for Luke Gedeke, as you mentioned. He's going to be out probably at least a minimum of 3 weeks, if not 4 weeks, I would say. Tristan Wirfs still probably 2 to 3 weeks away. So now they lose Cody Mauch, their right guard, who was an ascending player. He finished last year in pass pressure rate and pressure win rate. He ranked number 1 in the NFC and number 4 in the NFL out of all qualifying guards. So a lot of people don't know his name because who knows interior lineman's name. But he was one of the better young guards in the league right now and ascending too. Same thing with Luke Gedeke, top 5, top 3. I mean, you got Penei Sewell, Lane Johnson. You can make a case for Luke Gedeke right there is number 3, and he's certainly the third highest paid right tackle in the league. So case point. But losing those guys is tough. Now losing potentially Michael Jordan, they're already saying who are we going to play at right guard with Malk out, and they have some younger guys, a second year player Elijah Klein. They have a third year player who's been mostly a practice squad guy his entire career, and Luke Haggard, who could fill in that role. They did make some moves. They brought in Sua Opeta, who was actually competing for the left guard spot with Ben Bredesen last year, but a torn ACL knocked the season out. He re-signed with the Bucks back in free agency and was with them throughout the summer. Rehab and getting back. He was only able to practice the last 2 weeks and then was final cut downs. He's re-signing back to the practice squad. They signed Dan Feeney off of the Buffalo Bills practice squad. He's got center guard versatility. So they've got some bodies in there. I don't know if Feeney would be ready to go this week. I think maybe Sua Opeta might be the most likely choice, especially if Michael Jordan can't go. And we'll find out more about that tomorrow on Friday. If he can't go, I would expect them to put Sua Opeta because he knows the system at least. He was with the team, and then maybe Elijah Klein at guard, unless they wanted to put Ben Bredesen at guard, Elijah Klein, who can play center, and Sua Opeta can both play center. One of those guys at center. And then, so I think it will be, if Michael Jordan doesn't play, it will be a combination of maybe those three guys along the interior with Graham Barton at left tackle and Charlie Heck at right. If Michael Jordan can go, then it's probably either Elijah Klein or Sua Opeta in there. I would lean more Elijah Klein, but I would think Sua Opeta would probably be raised from the practice squad just because, again, he knows the system a little bit better than Dan Feeney would at this time. So it's a mess. Yeah. The good news is, out of all the spots on the offensive line, guard is one of the spots where you feel most comfortable replacing. You don't want to replace your tackles. Center is such a cerebral part of the game. When Tristan and Luke comes back in a couple weeks, you'll have 4 of your 5 offensive linemen, and now you're just plugging either Dan Feeney, Michael Jordan, Sua Opeta, Elijah Klein in at right guard, and you feel a lot better about that. But right now, woe is me.
I definitely feel your pain there. The Jets have gone through that a lot over the years. I mean, just 2 years ago, 13 different combinations. So certainly
he's out too for you guys.
Yeah. So certainly experience from that. And like you said, yes, AVT moving Tittman to guard, Myers slots in at center. So already dealing with some stuff there up front as well.
The Texans it's funny because the Falcons had to shuffle their offensive line because they lost Caleb McGarry and Storm Norton. So they're on their third string right tackle, who's really their backup guard. And then the Texans, their line has been a mess since they traded Tunsil.
Yeah.
And now the Jets they have a shuffled offensive line too. So neither the Buccaneers or any teams they faced this season have gone into the season with the starting 5 that they thought they were going to have, it just speaks to the NFL and, how you never know what's going to happen, and injury luck, especially the bad kind, can happen at any time.
Yes, 100%. And something to keep an eye on if the Jets could take advantage of that this week. Last week, opposite side of the trenches, but Ed Oliver was missing for the Bills. Jets defensive or offensive line, offensive line rather, running the football did not have success there. So I kind of want to transition that into now the Buccaneers defensive side of things. Kalijah Cansey placed on IR with the pec injury. What is your thoughts on that? The rest of the defensive line and the Jets last week, like I said, Ed Oliver missed the game. Still had struggles, though, running the football, so did not take advantage. Something to keep an eye on if they could take advantage. Obviously, Vita Vea is still an elite player, so he's still in the mix there. But what does that line look like without Cansey, and just your overall thoughts on that group?
Yeah, so Cansey is probably their best pass rusher on the team, and that's over Hassan Reddick, Vita Vea, and Yaya Diaby. So they're going to lose him. That's where they're going to lose the most out of Cansey. He was a improving run defender, but he wasn't their bread and butter guy. He was great at getting skinny, getting off blocks, and kind of funneling guys the other way because how quick and explosive he is. He'd be in the backfield and we'd run back, would have to make a quick cut because if not, he's going to run into Cansey. And that was where he really excelled, is penetrating. They still have Vita Vea, so they're going to be in good shape. The guys who they have stepping up in for him, Elijah Roberts, who's a 5th-round rookie this year, Greg Gaines, who's a veteran nose tackle, Logan Hall. Those guys are still pretty good against the run. I think Elijah Roberts is where you kind of can take the most shots there with the running game. But this defensive line, it's not just the defensive line as a whole. It's the entire defense selfless rallies. You got DBs coming in, flying to the ball. The linebackers are flying to the ball. Everyone's flying to the ball in the run game. So where the Jets really can maybe take advantage is not running the ball. I think they're going to have the same lack of success that they had this past week, and especially without Justin Fields. Tyrod Taylor can run the ball. He's certainly a threat there. You look what he did last week. Big first down, average 7 yards per carry, but he's not Justin Fields. Justin Fields was a fantasy pickup this year because he was a starting quarterback and he knew he was going to run his butt off. And the first game proved that too. I think he had like 30 fantasy points, but they're going to have to be able to contain Tyrod Taylor. But again, where I go back to that advantage is not necessarily using the backs as in the running game, but as that extension of the running game. If you look what the Bucs have done the last two games, it's Bijan Robinson, obviously the big 50-yard strike. And then, the Texans, Woody Marks had a big 30-something yard play in the running game. So using those running backs in the screen game, dumping out of the flat, the Bucs have struggled. Savassi Dennison particularly has struggled to cover that. So, you might not be able to run the ball, but if they can start using Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis, who I really like, and some of these, Braylon Allen and some of these other guys, and the receiving game is more of an extension of that run game. I think they'll have success there, but even with Cansey out, I don't think they're going to have much success running the ball. Even the 29 touchdown to Nick Chubb at the end of the game on Monday was because they let him score. So they didn't really. You take away that, and I think the rushing yards wasn't good. I can tell you exactly what it was without it, but it's not good.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about one other player up front, Hassan Reddick. Everybody knows the Hassan Reddick disaster last year with the Jets. Holds out, decides to show up when the team's on a 4-game losing streak, and it was just a complete train wreck. One of the many issues with the 2024 Jets. What have you seen from him, though, here in 2 games coming off of last year and just in general, going back to training camp? Like, how has he been, not just on the field, off the field, but kind of, a fresh start after what took place last season?
Well, the Bucs signed him to a contract after. So that's a good start automatically. They didn't trade assets for it and not sign him to a long-term deal, but he's been a breath of fresh air. He came into the Bucs facility with tape of every one of the Bucs edge rushers and went over individually with them what they could do different on each play. That's the guy Hassan has been throughout his career. So he's come in and ready to help these young guys learn, but not that. He's just the juice. He's fast. He's fresh. And you could see the effect that he was having on the defensive line when, especially in that first game, a little bit in this second game, not as much, but that first game, he was chipped by a tight end or running back, I think 15 out of his 24 rushes. So they really respected him. He got the sack. He probably missed 2 other ones that he was just seconds away from. And then this last game, the pass rush wasn't as strong for whatever reason. His pressure is dipped down in half pretty much. Didn't get a sack. But still, you could see the way he impacted the game, right? They're going to have to roll a tight end over there, sometimes leave it back into Chip. So he's been a breath of fresh air. He's just got to get rolling. I think he's going to be amped up this week. Again, someone who's not practicing right now for the second day in a row is Hassan Reddick. I think he's dealing with like a groin or something like that. But yeah, so he's been great so far. The Bucs have no problems with him. He's been great for the guys in the locker room. You can see the impact he's having on the field. It's just, can he stay healthy? Because once again, here we are with another Buccaneers starter dealing with an injury. And it's a shoulder injury. He was limited in practice and was not out there today during the media viewing session. So we'll see how that goes. But if he's up, he's going to be up to play this game.
Yeah, once again, we're talking to Buccaneers reporter J.C. Allen. To kind of close things out here, just taking a look at the rest of the defense, the linebackers, the secondary, Levante David, Jamel Dean, Antoine Winfield kind of headline that group. Yep. What have you seen from them so far? And, Tyrod Taylor, from a rushing perspective, not what Fields is, but from a passing perspective, definitely provides more consistency than Fields. So how do you feel they match up there and just your thoughts on that group?
Yeah, so The Buccaneers secondary probably was a weakness last year. I think it's transformed into a strength this year. They've been flying around. They've been playing a lot more press man, which suits Jamel Dean a lot better. It also gives them a lot more chances to make plays on the ball. I mentioned already, they're very disruptive in the run game. They're coming in, flying in, filling, tackling, redirecting guys to where there are defenders there to make the tackle. So they're very involved in that way. I think Jacob Parrish coming in as a rookie, they drafted him in the 3rd round as a nickel cornerback. He's been electric for them. He almost had high pointed interception, baiting CJ Stroud into a throw, and had a tackle for loss in week 1. And I think he's done a phenomenal job. Tyke Smith was their nickel cornerback last year. They moved him to safety to get him on the field last year. He just truck sticked one of the running backs for the Houston Texans on his way to a sack, and he's been really good. So I think the secondary as a whole, no turnovers after leading the preseason in turnovers. No turnovers so far. So that's a big one that they'll want to get done. Getting a little fuzzy. That's a big one that they need to work on is coming down with the ball. But I think as the secondary, Zy McCollum just got paid to a big contract, long-term contract extension. And Jamel Dean has played lights out in the last 2 weeks. So, will they try to double Garrett Wilson? Probably on a lot of plays. And I think Antoine Winfield Jr. will be the guy who's over the top there. Just because I don't think they're worried about, Josh Reynolds, who might not even play, or Alan Lazard, or Tyler Johnson, who they're familiar with, was with them when they won the Super Bowl. Again, I think there's some good playmakers on this team, but just not enough playmakers right now. With the linebackers, we'll see. Savasi Dennis has struggled in coverage. If he's going to be the one picking up Mason Taylor, we'll see how that goes. I think that's something to keep an eye on. Deion Jones, who they have, is a veteran. He's former Atlanta Falcon, was a Pro Bowler, pretty good in coverage. So they might platoon a little bit there. Levante looks good. He's just doesn't have the same speed and everything that he used to have. He let up a few plays on Dalton Schultz on their touchdown drive on Monday night. So, but instincts are through the roof there. He dropped the pick that was gifted to him in his hands. And I know he was upset about that one in his 200th game. That would have been so fitting to get a pick in your 200th game as a Buccaneer. But so I think turnovers is the biggest thing. Like, they're not coming with Tyrod coming in to start. Like, you have an opportunity. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing, but you have a guy who hasn't played significant snaps in a while. And even, on Sunday, he only had 11 passing attempts, went for 56 yards and a touchdown, only had 4 incompletions. But again, there's just not enough there for him to say, okay, they've got Garrett Wilson doubled up. I know I can go to Josh. I know I can go to Tyler John. Like, there's not enough there. So I think using those backs as an extension of the run game, getting the ball out of his hands quick is definitely going to be something they're going to want to do to try to move the ball down the field and put points. I think this Bucs team is banged up on the offensive line, and that hurts because if you look at the strength of the Jets defense, it's on the defensive line there. So they both have their strengths and weaknesses that they can take advantage of. For the Jets, and the Bucs on defense, it's lack of playmakers. You take 1 or 2 away, and how are they really going to consistently move the ball? They have to have someone step up. And on the defense, on the Bucs for the offense, it's how do you protect against Quinnen Williams, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, and even Harrison Phillips, who's been really good this year for you guys. So it becomes a difficult situation, a chess match for both of these teams back and forth, and who can exploit the other's weaknesses the most.
Yeah, the trenches battle will certainly be one of the biggest things to look for. And just from the quarterback perspective, go back to 2018, Thursday night, Tyrod started, Baker came in second half, came back against the Jets with Todd Bowles. Now it's Tyrod, Baker with with Bowles. Cool. So yeah, all the connections coming back in this one. Well, JC, really appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody find you, your social media, podcast, and all your Bucs coverage?
Yeah, so JC Allen NFL on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it, all everywhere else, Instagram. I mostly only post on X though. So if you're a football fan and want to keep tabs on the Bucs all season, feel free to give me a follow. I got a podcast called the Pirate Parlay Podcast. That's on the Sick Podcast Network on YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts. And then all my written content you can find over at Bucs Game Day on SI.
Yeah, definitely check them out. We'll link the podcast down below so all you guys can go and check that out. Really appreciate you coming on. We'll be back with a lot more content coming your way up until Sunday. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you soon.